Let's go. It is the 6th of November 2023, and we are on UX Research Call number 30. This call, the focus of this call is going to be on the research that was done on Bitcoin Core, which was kind of wrapped up about a month ago. And we're now moving towards the phase where we're going to wrap up we're looking for a way to present the research results to the community and to the ecosystem. Um, and that's pretty much what this call is about. Thank you so much for joining as well, Val. Super nice to have you here. Now, I just want to comment on one thing, just two things, is that although I'm the UX research evangelist in the community, I am by no means the authority or the specialist on this. I am very much, my goal is very much to work collaboratively on something and use the collaborative minds of everyone to create something together. And that's how I'd like this call to be. So feel free to talk and share and, oh, Joaquin, you're here as well. Super nice. Feel free to chime in and comment and all the rest. Um, One thing that I have is I have a little thing about research is that I've seen many research reports live in the form of a report. They collect dust in the on the shelves, and they never actually get used by people. And one of the things that I very much like to achieve out of this research is that the designers who are actually designing Bitcoin Core are able to take out actionable insights that they can translate into design. I do not want to create a 60-page report that lives in a report and that no one looks at, because then it's not usable. And yeah, that's pretty much it from my side. So looking forward to your help and how we can think together through this. Yeah, is there anything anyone would like to discuss, that comes up? Oh,
So, Mo, I think it would be great if we could give a little bit more of an update on where we are in the process. My understanding is I think the analysis has been completed. And so, what are some of those next steps? I know that you've already kind of put together some high level, potentially preliminary insights, but yeah, just would like to hear where we're at.
yeah, so the research at the moment exists in a Figma file. I'll be very honest here and transparent. I have never been presented with research like this before. That's just jumbled my mind. So I'm looking forward to leaning into the help of all of you to help me, and so that we can collaboratively put this together in a way that's going to make sense, and also that it comes together as quickly as possible. I don't want the research report to take like a month to come together. I just want it to just be there. We have the research, the Figma file at the moment, which I'm going to share here in the chat, and then you can feel free to hop in, and then I'll do a bit of a walkthrough of the Figma file. I'll do a share screen. I've copied this Figma file. I've made a copy myself. Elena would like to speak. Go ahead, Elena.
Um, just a question maybe for the call today. Do we want to set a little bit of an agenda in terms of like, what do we want the outcome of the call to be? Do we want this to be more of a brainstorming session around like possible ways that we could synthesize the report? Or should it be more tactical in terms of like, these are the tasks that we need to outline, and this is a timeline, and this is the audience that we want to kind of like deliver to? It's a little bit, I think, along the same lines of Val's question. But maybe before we go into the research, if we could just spend 5 minutes, like throw your ideas in the chat in terms of how the call can go. That way we make sure we're like on track, or however we want to manage the call.
Yeah.
And I might have a little gnome pop in here. It's early morning in my part of the world, so forgive me if I have to go off camera.
Oh, she's super welcome to come say hi. I love having kids on the call. But yeah, I'm agreeing with Christoph. Both sound good. It feels like we need to find a plan of action together, collaboratively. First, come up with a plan of action. And if we're able to come up with a plan of action on the quickest way to synthesize this, we can then start thinking about timelines. But more, I think we're more in the plan of action phase. How is this actually synthesized in the way that makes the most sense? Yeah.
And Mo, I would actually suggest that we like maybe so I'm brand new to this space, and I know I took a look at the research plan, but it'd be great for us to kind of go over the research goals and the questions and like the people that we interview, just to kind of level set us a little bit more, because it's ultimately going to lead us to coming up with a plan on how to synthesizing this. Um, I also was not, when I took a look at the research plan, an open question that I had was like how did this like questions come up? Who were the who had these questions? Were they like designers, particularly from Bitcoin Core app? Was it just like the entire community? Because that is also going to dictate how we go about creating a report or the best way to visualize or represent this. So if we could kind of just go through that maybe for 5 minutes, that would be really helpful for me as well.
I love this. Yeah, absolutely. So this is the initial research plan, which I shared here. We collaboratively came up with this. So this is the document, which I know Christoph jumped in and commented, and a few of the devs as well. You know, the Qt widgets GUI is being designed at the moment. Design is ahead of development at the moment. And some of the research goals was to understand the personas of people using Bitcoin Core at the moment. No research like this has ever been done before. And one of the goals would be, you know, how can we understand the person who is actually using Bitcoin Core on a day-to-day basis, frequent users. The second one was the jobs to be done. What are the jobs that these personas need Bitcoin Core to do for them? And the other part is to understand which parts of the GUI are being used the most, struggles, pain points, things they're struggling with, understand what struggles makes them happy. So that's pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much it. Those are the bigger goals of this. And then, you know, we interviewed two bigger buckets. One would be current users, and the other one would be potential users. So the people reading this report, I think, if you need to, if we think about who's going to be reading this, it's going to be very practical. The designers, one of which Christoph is here on this call, which is super helpful, and the ecosystem at large, because no research has been done like this before, understanding who's using the GUI. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that really helps. And thanks, Chris, if we haven't necessarily met, but nice to meet you. One of the things, Mo, to kind of get to the point about like how can we make this be an actionable report, be actionable insights. It's something that we use, which is when we create research plans, we talk about like what's a critical business decision that this research will answer, that this research needs to answer. And so, for example, Christopher, I would love to hear like what are some of the like how do we visualize or how do you hope to use this report or these research insights in your next steps of where you're at? That will also help us in terms of figuring out how to put the research report together. It will also help us ensure that it's actionable.
Yeah, very good question. So well, in this open source land in Bitcoin, things are probably not as clear as we're going to have a few bullet points and we have like, you know, business decisions and all of that. I think it's going to be more of a thing where about taking these insights, structuring them, organizing them, and then making them available in different formats to anyone in the community, the developers, the designers, and then let them kind of work with it, maybe state a few things and summarize a few things, but make sure to give access to the raw data as well. It's like, you know, don't trust, verify. People want to verify and maybe come up with their own ideas. And so I think that could happen. There could be a collaborative workshop, like once this data is cleaned up and organized nicely, there could maybe be a 1-hour workshop where everyone gets together and it's just a conversation about these things. And then you let people kind of soak it in. That could be coupled with, let's say, a 5-minute video that someone can just watch where it's like the research group says, here's kind of what we think, should come out of this. So I think different formats for different people work pretty well there, because it's kind of the hive mind does things, not an executive, if you will. And the other thing was, this GUI has not really been redesigned in like 10 years or so. So the hypothesis is that it's outdated and it doesn't really serve many people well. So the people who use it right now, it's just as interesting as the people who did not end up using it. Like, I initially didn't use it because I was like, what's this? I don't get it. And then the other thing is that this new version of the Bitcoin Core app doesn't just work on desktop, but also on mobile, unlocking billions more people with a completely different use cases, and they're out and about and they're just doing stuff on their devices and tapping away, rather than having a proper computer in their home, which is certain parts of the world have that, other parts don't. So that's another consideration there. And I think one of the hypotheses is that the wallet so far has worked best for the hobbyists and developers, and not so much for the mainstream broader audience. But a goal would be to allow for this to become more broadly usable, not just the wallet part, but also the node part, to encourage decentralization and all this type of stuff. And now I will stop talking because I feel like it's been too long. Did that help? Feel free to keep questioning things.
Yeah, that did. So there's two pieces to that. One is so just to give a little bit more context. So I've been a researcher for about 6 years now, and one of the great things about research is that yes, we can always make it open, but if it's too broad, it doesn't actually not end up being used. Which is why I was asking, like, who are there any immediate people who will like need this right now or will use this right now? Mo, go ahead. Yeah.
There's two, like at the top of in my mind, the GUI as it's being developed, there's almost two pathways at the moment. There's the node side of things, and then there's the wallet side of things. Now, there's a lot of open conversations in the ecosystem as to whether the wallet and the node side of things should be together. But I think what would be super helpful is, in the future, for the ecosystem and for this to keep on living and being relevant, it would be useful for the information about the node side of things to be semi kind of separated from the information about the wallet side of things, because then the node side of things becomes very relevant to the node development side of things, and the wallet becomes very relevant to the wallet side of things. But yeah, I don't know, Christoph, what are your thoughts on that? Like, it's, try to pull the node information out and keep it to itself, and pull the wallet and keep it to itself. And Mr. Gnome, also feel free to chime in as well.
Yeah, I mean, in some way, you kind of have to look at the data and see what it provides.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have it. I'm not close enough to the data right now, because it's very true what Val said. If you just kind of lay it all out there, then it's like, cool. But I do think it's helpful. So I think you have to kind of work the data, see what's there, and highlight that and clean it up a bit, and categorize it and group it, maybe write some summaries and all of that stuff. So everyone has kind of simple entry points into this stuff where they don't have to do the same work on their own. And then you could tie that into different parts of the design and development process, and then you could have specific conversations around it, around how important is making people customize their own node, or is the wallet more but it has to come from the information, right? And in some places you will be able to say, well, the information is not good enough, we can't make any statements, and that's also something that's valuable there. So yeah, I mean, you could talk about process, not decide what the outcome is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is super great, Mo and Chris. Thanks for the insight. I think what would be best would be for us to answer the research questions that we have outlined, just make sure that we answer them, and then also in terms of, if it sounds like we kind of everybody would benefit from this, but if everybody benefits from it, then sometimes not everybody benefits from it, kind of thing. So I think it would be great if we, I think at the baseline, we answer the research questions based on with the report and with the insights that we got. Mo, I did look through the data, so I do know what you mean. There was like a lot of variance in the data, but I can definitely help with that. Just kind of make sure this happens in research all the time, where we get different polling points all the time.
Yeah,
But there's definitely a way to go about that. And as long as we answer the research questions, I think we can kind of touch upon what Christoph was mentioning, like maybe start broad and then do like a brainstorming workshop or a jam session or a design sprint or anything along those lines, where this research is foundational in that sense. And we can what I think is going to end up happening is from that we're going to end up figuring out like we need more in-depth or we need more research in certain areas, or we need to
exactly.
follow up on questions.
Yeah.
So just at a high level, I think thanks for answering my questions. And I think we, as long as we answer the research questions, I think should be good for now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
My
think that
initial
should be like
intuition. Go ahead, Joe.
Can I bring up one point? Can everybody hear me? Thanks. One quick point that what Christoph said, I think is really important, and I want to iterate just because I've had a little bit of, I helped out on one project here, and because it is open source, people kind of, I know I floated in and floated out, and what Christoph said about allowing people to kind of have access to the data without jumping fully into the project, I think it's important to try to like present the data and give people like a stepping stone into it. I just think that's pretty important.
Gotcha. Yeah. I know Ferrero raised that as well. So at the moment, we have all 20 research transcripts, which are saved in a private folder on my Google, which I've not made accessible to anyone. These were conducted by 3 interviewees, myself, as well as 2 other people. I think in terms of privacy and maintaining the privacy of the people who we interviewed, we would clean up those transcripts and remove any information. That would have to be something that would be done between myself as well as the other 2 people who interviewed. And then once those are cleaned up and any private information or anything that links anyone to anything has been removed, we can make those then public. So I think that that's something that I can add on my to-do list, is clearing up those transcripts.
Mo, when I read
Go ahead.
When I read the interview guide, I know that we asked the participants for their consent to like record them. And I know there was like a little thing we said that. Did we tell them that their transcript might potentially get shared with the broader community? Like even if we scrape the personal information and all the things, did we share that with them?
I need to look through it. I think I remember saying to participants that parts of their comments would be shared with a larger ecosystem. I didn't say that the entire transcript would be shared. So that's something that, it's a delicate one, because there's something with sharing the transcript and then there's something with sharing parts of the transcript. It's 2 kind of different things. I don't think we asked for consent in sharing the entire transcript. I think the consent is of the,
I'd be very I think it's a good point for us. So this is kind of new in terms of research, where we want to make sure everybody has access to it, but we also have to be very careful that future participants are not put off their personal, or like not personal information, but by not being asked about their consent to share their like comments and feedback. So I think it's something for us to maybe think about for the next research project. For this research project, I think because we're kind of starting in the middle, the interviews already happened. Maybe for this one, we can just make sure we let the community know that, hey, it's kind of a learning process, but because of said reasons that we didn't necessarily make it explicit for people that we would share their entire transcript, and they didn't give consent for that. But for the next one, we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I'm still learning myself in terms of, how to get consent about sharing. And it's such a big thing in this community that everything is open and transparent. Elena, go ahead.
So a few thoughts. One, just on the topic of transcripts, like in my experience in open source, is just because it's open source doesn't mean that absolutely everything is on the record. And so I think that's a reasonable expectation for the community to want to see a research guide, research questions. I don't think it's a reasonable expectation to see recorded calls, especially like in these types of kind of like crypto, Bitcoin adjacent communities. There's, I think, a huge respect for privacy and anonymity. So I would kind of like, as a group, I think we're still trying to figure out what the middle ground is, but let's give ourselves a kind of generous breadth of being able to like say, we're the people who are participating in this, and then this is our strong opinion for how we're going to present the data or present the insights. If folks want to dig in deeper, which in my experience 9 times out of 10 they do not, like then if folks want to dig in deeper, then I think an appropriate way to handle that would be on a case-by-case basis and maybe a follow-up call or a follow-up workshop. So I feel like sometimes it's almost like a red herring of like, oh man, we really have to do all of these, we have to go through all these hoops and all these works just to put that information out there, when really like this is the group that did those interviews. We should feel confident that within the insights and within the quotes, we can present to the community like a good enough representation of the information. And at the end of the day, like the insights are what this group believes is the biggest takeaways of the research. If people have strong pushback on that, that's an awesome starting point for more research. So that I kind of think like it's forward looking instead of like, oh man, let's try to redact and go through a bunch of hoops with that. So that was one point on that topic. And then for the other discussions around kind of like how to summarize the information, present the research goals, the examples that I have, there's this researcher in this other ecosystem. Her name is Sasha. Are you familiar with her, Mo? She does UX stuff. So she does an awesome job. Like this is her GitHub folder. And her whole thing is like, love your users. And she just does, every single time she does a research sprint, she publishes like a deck in GitHub. And I have, in my own work, like I just have really taken a lot of inspiration from the way she presents information. So I think it strikes a good balance. Yeah. Oh, cool, Christoph. Nice. We should invite her to these calls. So that might be getting a little more tactical, but in my mind, that's more kind of like, okay, is this a model we want to follow? Is there another model we want to follow in terms of summarizing insights? But Christoph and Val both mentioned this. I think having a summary deck and then having a call where you go over the insights and then have folks who are part of Bitcoin Core kind of say like, oh, this is how I'm going to take this insight and put it into action, or this is how I'm going to design differently based on what I learned today. Something like that.
This has been such a good discussion. So good. So good. No, thank you so much. Yeah. Christoph, do you want to add something? You
just one extra thing, and that's a little bit of a tricky thing, is ideally, so the design process, the way that this project moves is extremely slow. It will take years, right? So the trick is that there's enough, that the research, the results are available enough and people internalize them enough that they can carry that information on for a long period of time, along with, other things that happen, other information that comes in. So it's not just this blip, but it's something that carries through. It needs to marinate into the brains.
Exactly. We're talking about marination here, so everything, whatever comes out of it, it'll be something that will be referred to, it's, I'd love to be able to get on the Bitcoin Core calls, and then they, we're talking about the node side of things. I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, that was there, remember that thing from the research, and just pull it up, so it's kind of.
And sometimes it will be accepted and sometimes it will be rejected, but at least there's a intentional discussion about it that is using research,
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully that answered all of the questions.
I had another question.
Go ahead.
I had another question. How familiar are the folks working on Bitcoin Core with research?
We are in the adoption phase in the adoption phase, if that makes
So
sense.
yeah, so the reason why I ask is because there's a lot of initial questions like I want to see the transcripts, I want to see like how the data was analyzed. So all of these questions oftentimes to me signal that folks are pretty early on in like working with researchers. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's curious. They want to know what it's like. So, but if we, again, going back to your point more earlier of like, we want people to use this, we need to understand who our audience is. And when Christoph said like, they might reject it, that to me signals that we need to probably do a little bit of understanding of who the people we'll be working with and sharing this report with, just to know like, you know, because Elena shared a beautiful deck. We could have the most beautiful looking deck with like top 5 insights, top 5 recommendations. But if the team or if the group doesn't feel like it works for them, like it's not going to get used. So I think it would be great as this is our next step to also understand, maybe have us meet with the Bitcoin Core folks and get an understanding of where they are within research or like their understanding of working with researchers or within a research team, to also help us figure out like, okay, what do we also need to do in addition to, of course, doing the analysis in the report.
Yeah, the trick is just that that there are circles of people. Like when I first started doing this stuff, the developers would tell me, I'm not going to evaluate your design and tell you if it's good or bad. Ask the community. And I asked, where's the community? And it's the Reddit channel. And there were 150,000 people in the Reddit. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And then I came up with a way. I thought about like how to present this properly with a short video and explanations, and try to like guide people into things. I put tons of efforts into like writing it, not too formally because it's Reddit and all of this stuff, right? But you have these, and the developers might also sometimes say, well, it's not me, like ask the community. And then you end up in these weird things where someone on Twitter will pick it up, and then the conversation will go over here and then there. And even in Bitcoin Core, like sometimes people spend a lot of time developing certain codes, like not like the central group of developers, but there are other circles that contribute in different ways. Sometimes just code reviews, sometimes actual coding, sometimes all these discussions and whatnot. And sometimes people they spend a ton of time on something and the hive mind just rejects it, but like the rejections is quiet. It just sits there and never gets acted on. There's like all kinds of dynamics happening. And that's why I feel like with the design process too, sometimes it's, you have all these curious minds there and you will always have a lot of people that will never be intimately familiar with the design process because they're part of the larger community, but they all have a say and they observe and they can be part of the conversations. So yeah, it's good if you have the people who do the hands-on the majority of the work or maybe full-time in it for long periods of time, if there's a good understanding. But I do think you always have to make it available in different ways to different people so they can all like find their unique way of absorbing this information and agreeing or disagreeing with it. Yeah, I don't know. That just sounds really wishy-washy in the end, I guess. But there's some type of method to the madness, I think.
Another thing is in terms of things being online and being open. Val, I know and Elena, you're probably also familiar with the concept of having a repository. Now, the concept of a repository in the Bitcoin ecosystem does not exist at the moment. I have explored ways of creating a repository for Bitcoin Core, which I created a very mini version in GitHub. The reason I created it in GitHub is because GitHub is open and accessible for most people to use. It's not that they need to sign up as a user to access it. I do not want people to feel they need to give away their email address to be able to access the research. They should just be able to click into GitHub and see it. So I would personally ideally see this living in GitHub somewhere so that it's accessible, it's open, everyone can read it and do with it whatever they want. So yeah.
Also, one thing Christoph was talking about, and then I really appreciate Mr. Noam's comment. So there's a difference in my mind, and kind of what we're talking about in this call is research as a deliverable, like here's a beautiful deck, versus a practice, like, okay, everyone who is contributing to this open source ecosystem voluntarily has kind of a base level understanding of the practice of design or the practice of research and how we use those insights to inform future work. And both of these are like aspirational goals, right? We're volunteers. We're going to try and then see what sticks. And I think it's okay for these to be kind of efforts. Like we're building a practice or building a body of research. So the first one doesn't have to be, and not even that this is the first one, but that they don't all have to be kind of 100% airtight. Although I do think it's a good thing to have that as a goal. In terms of like kind of going back to like, all right, so actionably, we have all these interviews that have been conducted. We have all these, like, what's a good goal? I think a good goal for this research is to do a little bit of both. So like, let's summarize it into a place where people can come in with very little context and understand what was the intent behind getting 20 people on a call. Why did you ask them these questions? And then what did you do with their answers? That's like summarizing. That's very much like research as a deliverable. Like, oh, it could be like almost like a news article. Like I read this is the headline, this is the takeaway. Research as a practice, that is way more like, oh, kind of going to Val's point, like who are the 5 people that we want to get on a call and ask them like, well, now that you have the summary, how does this make you feel? Is this different than what you expected? Is that like, what if you're going to reject something, what are you rejecting and why? Like, can we learn more about that? What are you curious about? One example, Val, for one thing that I found pretty eye-opening when I first started doing the Bitcoin design calls, there's this Bitcoin node survey that was done in 2021. It had over 1,000 responses, and no, they hadn't, to my knowledge, been publicly summarized. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm happy to summarize that, because it's a lot of valuable, even though it was a pretty noisy survey, it was like pretty valuable information, I thought. And it goes to like, maybe it's not a perfect thing in terms of research. Like you still just have a lot of numbers out of context. Like, oh, 1/3 of people update their Bitcoin Core node every major release, and 1/3 do it every time they turn on the computer. Like, without knowing kind of what your goals were with that research or who you interviewed, that insight is pretty meaningless. Or like the summary of that question is pretty meaningless. So that's where having a strong relationship with the people who want to use this information or who asked the question in the first place is really helpful. Okay, so I'll stop now.
Yeah, this is a good point that Christoph makes here, and I'm going to read his. Here is an example from a couple of years ago. There was a 40,000-page report that was produced.
Word, not page. That would be crazy.
Oh, sorry, 40,000 word report that was produced. And then what came out of it was a single page report, single page in the Bitcoin Design Guide. So this is my point. I'm coming back to, although I'm in the community as a research evangelist, I have this sort of, I see research as being something that is actionable, something that is easy to refer back to, something that's easy to find when you're in the middle of a conversation. And I don't feel practically when I'm jumping on the calls with the group of the designers on Bitcoin Core that I'm going to be able to say, yeah, let me just scroll to page 42 of the report and I'll just, there it is. You see there, it's just, so that's kind of, but yeah, it can be searchable as well. But, that's kind of my point with, yeah.
Yeah, and it can totally be done, and like from the industry, like oftentimes people like attention span is 5 minutes, so you really have to hit them with the top five things, so you get them, and you really gotta give them an insight, not just a finding. So it's totally doable.
Yeah, cool.
I think one of the, I think just, I know it's been a great conversation. Thank you for answering all of my questions. I know we have to get to the tactical piece of like what to do next. I would just make sure that we keep, when we're as we're learning, this sounds like an iterative process, which is great. That's part of the design process. It sounds like we are going to establish ourselves as a practice eventually. We're going to have to learn how to get there. I love Elena's idea of just like, let's just make sure that we put that out there. I think it'd be great for us to also kind of come up with, like, at the beginning of a presentation, like, here's what we're striving for, here are goals as a practice, as a research practice. We're going to continue learning as we do more research reports. The reason why I say this is because it's we want to make sure that as researchers we we are the volunteers who are researching and are in a way the subject matter experts. We want to make sure that people see us as that way, and there's no not just like it can happen with research, especially when you tell them something that they might not necessarily be excited about to hear, but it's sort of like the truth. And so it's just good for us to have those like mission statements as a practice at the beginning with the reports, let them know that we're working on this, learning about it, and then hit them with the top 5 insights, top 5 recommendations, and then we can go into more in depth for all of those details.
Love that.
I think it's
Love that
it's a
approach.
great idea. Yeah, just something
Love that approach.
to
Here's
really
the top
pound
5
it.
things. If you want to go into detail, here it is at the bottom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's actually how, like, in the industry, from the industry that I come from, that is how we do it. We are oftentimes presenting to executives who really don't understand research and don't have the time to really consume a lot of like in-depth interviews or quotes or videos. So I know that it can definitely be done, but I also want to make sure that we establish ourselves as researchers and we're serious about this. We're not just.
So are
We're
you
not just
guys coming on the next Bitcoin Core call as well? We pause them for now. Just kidding.
Sounds perfect.
All right. So I'm going to hop into the tab now. What I'm going to do very intentionally is I'm just going to zoom in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in this piece of text here.
So I cannot see your screen if your intention is to share it.
Yeah, I am. Oh, that was the intention.
Are you in the Figma file?
I am in the Figma file. So here's my screen. I hope that's, is that visible?
It's, yeah.
So I've copied and pasted the research goals directly from that previous document. And I put them in here intentionally so that we just have them here. So the one was understanding the persona. The second was understanding the jobs to be done for each of those personas. The third is understanding the parts that are being used the most, understanding struggles and hopes, and understanding what makes people happy, what do they enjoy. So these were our research goals. And, as Val said, main thing is let's try to answer these questions and get these questions answered from the data that we have. We have 2 sets of data. One set is people who are already using Bitcoin Core for reason X, Y, and Z. And the second part is people who might be interested in using Core. What has been done with this data that you're now looking at in front of you? It's been bucketed. So what do I mean by bucketed? It means that we've very intentionally looked for patterns and trends. So if the person, which Bitcoin wallet do you use? So if they say Breeze, we put all answers with Breeze together. We put all answers with Blue Wallet together. So we very intentionally bucketed things. What do you like the most about the wallet? We bucketed things. There's one little nuance that I came across when I was trying to kickstarted going through this and summarizing it, is that the interface of Bitcoin Core is extremely complex. Like I'm still learning about it. I've been on the project for almost 1.5, almost 2 years, and I'm still learning about it. We have these buckets, which we've now bucketed. The thing with Bitcoin Core is there are correlations and relationships between buckets. So my feeling when I look at this over here is that there could actually be some things that can actually be grouped together, which might not be so visible now, but which is actually the case. so in that sense, we could lean into people who are a little bit more technical know-how, who are currently on the call, which would be Christoph as well as Mr. Gnome, in saying, well, okay, look, these are the buckets we came up with, but actually there's a connection between, I don't know, coin control and payment options, for example, and putting those together because, as I said, the UI is very complex, and although these seem to be the buckets, it's not actually quite the case. So just want to add on that as well. Throw in a little bit of a curveball. So yeah, we can discuss what would be the best way to sort of put these. Oh, am I sharing my screen? Let's see.
You still are, yeah.
Yeah, would be good to kind of discuss how to put these together to answer these research questions. What do you guys feel would be a plan of action? And I can just make some notes. Or maybe we can do something, we can even just take 5 minutes. We can use the timer function over here, which is super fun. So I'll just go 5 minutes, or maybe even 3 minutes is enough. We can start with 5. And what if we all just grab sticky notes and just say, this could be, I don't know, a logical plan of action of how to approach this. Just grab a sticky note and write on the sticky note, and that's allowing everyone to have a voice, I think. What do you guys think of that?
So I can't edit Figma
Yeah, me
files.
neither.
Does no one have edit access? Okay, hold on.
No,
So we will
I
share.
think I ran into that issue, Mo, that I pinged you about, where he thinks I should be an educator or a student.
Mhm.
So I don't have access to Figma, but I can throw my ideas in the chat if that's okay.
So here, the document should be open to edit. I have a copy of this document, so it's all good
Okay.
if anything goes wrong with this, it's all good. We have a copy of this document. So I'll just, I'll start the timer, grab a sticky note, and write how you think we could start to approach this. And then I'll just click play. Mm. It feels like everyone might be finished. Is that correct?
Yep. Or
Okay.
at least I am. Sorry, speaking for myself.
So my computer's frozen. So just give me a moment. It cannot handle all the things that are going on right now. Um, just a second. I'm just trying to figure out what would be the best thing.
Yeah, Mo. So is your application frozen?
Yeah, my tabs just won't even let me click through different tabs.
Oh no.
Yeah, I might need to completely shut down my computer, but then
Oh, hold on. You're gonna break the recording. Maybe just stop sharing your.
yeah, the
The music
stop
is very calming, I will say. Oh, and it, just as I said it, it stopped.
so the stop sharing is also not working. I'm like clicking on it and
Yeah,
even
I don't know how it works in Windows, but at least on the Mac in the activity, you can close specific tabs without closing all of Chrome,
oh yeah.
or you just give it time, and maybe
Oh,
it
it's
will
that
take
time now.
itself
Yep.
out.
Yep.
Time heals all wounds.
I'm just 5.
Okay, so it's not that.
It's not too bad. Now
I have dozens.
I have 2 open. Okay. All
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm not going to share my screen because I don't want things to start freezing here. I'm just going to jump into the Figma file which we're working on, and then it seems you guys have put a whole bunch of ideas in there, so we can just. I'm loving the one suggestion from Christoph is don't overthink it. This is something that I definitely would like to lean into. Let's just try to keep it short, simple, and like just do the thing. Like do it. Okay, so let's see what we have. I'm gonna zoom in. Okay, some people have already put some thumbs up on things. Should we just take 1 minute? Could you guys just go through if you're on the Figma, just put a green thumbs up into any ideas you like or anything. So let's just take 1 minute to do a green thumbs up um, for anything. So yeah, just 1 minute.
There's a few that are like saying the same thing, like clean up the data, I think is a common theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my don't overthink it comment is just, it's the same with design. Designers have sometimes a thing where it's like, it's so precious, but it's not, right? You can just kind of just do stuff and keep moving and iterate as you go along and do more research and have more conversations.
Yeah.
Don't get paralyzed by process in a way, which I don't think we are, but
I had one question. I don't want to get us off piece, but there was one question that I added in the chat So I'm very eager to help and jump in. And my tendency, though, is that I really feel like the summaries as they are now in the Figma file, it's almost like I would be taking like pre-digested or like pre-chewed things, and I have a desire to like just read the transcript and kind of like go through it myself. But I
Mhm.
don't know if there's openness to sharing the transcripts with like a select few folks. Um, Otherwise, I'm happy to just use the Figma file as like the primary source material. But that would be my like. I think whenever I do UX research projects in the past, I'm just used to starting from the primary source. So it would be a little out of my comfort zone to start from the sticky notes in the Figma file. So if there's openness to that, that would be awesome, and I'm happy to take a stab and kind of like commit to delivering something this week.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a sticky one because these, yeah, these sticky notes have come like the people who actually did the interviews, they like copied and pasted from their interviews directly into the sticky notes, if that makes sense. And then the sticky notes have already been, how can you say, like bucketed. So I feel like if we go back to the um, processing the transcripts, we kind of go back one step, which I get, but it feels like if we would go back one step and miss out on this that's already being processed.
So, sorry, you're saying this was processed by the people who actually gave the answers. They took their own answers and then put them in sticky notes and then organized them.
No, so so Saunter did interviews, and then also Honey Badger, and then so the three of us did interviews between the three of us, and then we took our own interview transcripts, and then we copied and pasted over
Okay.
each.
Interviewers did that, so
Yeah.
there is that separation there. So yeah, I don't know, Elena, Val, it's kind of up to you. Do you in this case just want to deal with what's there, or
Yeah.
just organize amongst yourselves and find a solution?
We would have to
there?
caveat this report, Mo, like, because we like usually like when you do the interview and then you do the stickies, what Alana said is true. It's like we're inherently humans will take a summary. So it's subjective in a sense,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
which is totally fine. This is again, we're kind of in the learning process and we're starting right in the middle, which is not how it's usually done. But we can take this as a learning kind of thing that like this is something for us to keep an eye out for in the future. But when we do the report, we probably will have to caveat, but like just mentioning that, hey, you know, like there was we did the analysis based on the interviewees on the moderators post-it notes from the interviews. Like we're just gonna have to caveat that, and I think it's totally fine.
Yeah,
That
I
way
think
we
it's
don't go
fine.
too bad. But I think to Elena's point earlier of like we can look forward. We'll just be like, well, we're figuring out the things as we go along. So
Yeah.
Yeah, create a to-do list of all the things to do better, differently, worse, whatever next time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, let's do that. I mean, I'll post tomorrow in the research channel, and I'd love it if you guys could add in sticky notes about how could we replicate this process and do it better next time. I think there's so much to learn that came up. Any plans when this report will go live? As Mo said, there's no point in that. No, yeah. Ferro, good question. We in open source world, you know, as I say, we don't have particular timelines that we work with. Once we have a more clear idea of how we're going to approach this, we will then have a more clear idea of what the timelines are. So yeah, time is an illusion.
It's a flat circle. So
Yeah.
I would say we have bitcoincore.app, which are the design docs basically. Most of that's content stuff that I put there. Some pages are really empty. It would be amazing to have a page in there called research. Maybe not all the research can be in other places, right? But maybe it links to it and summarizes what's going on, tells people how to contribute. if they want to fill out a survey or whatever it is. I think those design docs are a good entry point for that. And ideally, other parts of the design docs, like if there's a page about product direction, that could also refer back to the research. It's like, we're building it this way because of our findings over here. So I think that website could be a good entry point. And then, like, if you want to have some research on GitHub and someone else does it somewhere else because that's just how they work or so, we can link out to all of those places. And maybe it could also go into the Bitcoin Design Guide as in like reference into the right places. But yeah, it should be discoverable. It's important.
I'm noticing a trend here as well. In terms of next steps, there's these green notes here by Val, and then Ferrero also added in the same thing: clean up the Figma file. It feels like that's also something that Christoph mentioned here as well. Personal task for me is to read through, dig in, and sort through it and get a feel of what's there. So it feels like already 3 people kind of commented on the same thing. Let's see what else, report what is done. Yeah, it feels like this is task number 1. I don't know how the rest of you feel about it. Cleaning up the Figma file feels like task number 1.
What does cleaning up mean?
Yeah, what does cleaning up mean, Val? How would you describe cleaning up?
Yeah, I knew. It's like I knew I was gonna ask this question. But yes, so one of the things that is definitely missing is we need to connect the sections to the questions that they belong to. Like right now, there's just a lot of stickies, and especially for Elena and I that are jumping in the middle, I have no context as to how this answer came about. So that'd be the first thing. The second piece is I need to know the type of participant that answered this. Was it a new user? Was it a heavy user? I know we have 3. I think we interviewed 3 types of folks, or 3 types of like segments.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know who these people are, because what we could see is, and I think the reason why the data is too noisy right now is because I think different demographics or segments might be saying different things and different needs. So that's the second piece, which is we need to identify who these folks are, and that should allow us to kind of clean up the data. And then once we have that, then we can do what you said earlier, which is bubbling up the higher level themes that can be connected. But we need to where those answers come from.
So in terms of cleaning up the file, is that something that I can do? I can try to take all the higher level questions that we have from the UX research goals and try to clean things up and move things under the questions, if that makes sense.
I think we have an interview guide, right, Mo? I think there was there was a structure of questions that got asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you know, I don't know, and I think going back to maybe Elena's point, which is like, can we get the transcripts?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things. One is like, Mo, there's like 7 people on this call and we all want to help. So an actionable thing should be like, what could somebody other than you do? And so so for cleaning up the Figma file, like, I'm happy to take a stab. And I think maybe what Val and I and anyone else on the call might do is just create another, like, kind of like how data sorting phase 1 is its own little section.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just create a different space in the Figma file universe of like clean up version. Like, I'm copy pasting all these stickies and putting them over here. So that's like, I think if everybody wants to maybe attempt that this week is a very doable goal. And yeah, I'm just going to resist the urge to ask for those transcripts. And then I mean, I think there's enough in there. Like, once you just read through it, there's a lot of richness, but it'll be really tempting to say like everybody was running into problems with like node configuration at the first step, and that's probably not true. Like, what probably happens is, of the 20 people you talk to, the like 10 power users consistently gave that signal, and then the 5 newbies just didn't even know that you could configure a node, and so they didn't say that. And so that's a way in which, I'd be hesitant to kind of like draw too many conclusions from from the research, but we can definitely summarize and synthesize what's already there. So that would be my kind of my homework for the call is just like by next week have my own version of the like cleaned up Figma file somewhere in this section or somewhere on this page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add. So there's the term cleanup. I would just suggest thinking about it. There are different lenses of this information. There's the actual thing that happened. Then there's the transcript, which is raw. Then there's this lens of just copy pasting that next to the questions into sticky notes, which is a step. Then there's the one that Mo did, categorizing it by features or whatever it is. And then there are other steps, right? There are like different lenses, and different lenses are helpful for different people at different parts of the process and all of this stuff. And it's good to leave a paper trail where it's like, okay, this is my lens here. We're going to create a new lens. We're going to duplicate the file or duplicate the page, and then use this other lens. So it's not necessarily one's dirty, one's clean, right? It's just like different parts of the process and maybe a different perspective on things.
Yeah, Christoph brought up a good point. Is it would be good if you could just duplicate the file and work in. We all work in our own files. I think would be a good approach, because otherwise this can get very, very messy. Yeah, if we can all just duplicate our own files. So next steps, in terms of
Sorry, I lost Wi-Fi there for a second. Mo, I think we do need to identify the people that are providing the type, like are they new users, power users on this piece? We don't have to give their names or anything, but I think that is very important for us because what I'm concerned might happen is we'll hear like Elena's example of like issues and new users might have a completely different type of challenge, but that might get lost because the majority maybe said something else, and maybe that majority happen to be heavy users. So we do need to identify those 3 different demographics, especially since we actually call that out on the research report. We will get asked questions about like how this is different among the 3 different segments.
Okay, Elena and Christoph are giving themselves homework. I love this. Okay, Christoph's homework is to read through and leave comments and have some type of reaction summary. Elena's homework is to do the same as Christoph. Okay. What would anyone else like to do?
Is there some kind of, what came right before this? Is it recorded somewhere? Like the questions, is it on like a web page somewhere? Like, okay.
Yeah, we have the research report.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys do a great job of getting that. I just need to look that. I just want to get some context for.
How about I do this? I will share every single Google document that was ever done with regards to this UX research sprint in terms of planning or anything. I can share that in the research channel. And then Joe, maybe you can see how you would like to work with that, because that would be giving the sort of background, right?
Yeah.
I can share that in the research channel, and you can go ahead with that. Bye, Elena. Mr. Gnome says strongly agree with Christoph. It needs to be user type matters a lot and needs to be matched with responses. Yeah. In terms of the user type that we have at the moment, we have the 2 bigger buckets. We have someone who is already using Core as one larger bucket, and we have someone who has never used Core. Would that be enough to form 2 different user types? Because at the moment, the way that the sticky notes are is that you can see that the person has been in the space for 10 years, but you cannot see that person who's been for 10 years said that thing. That's not possible to see through the sticky notes.
Mo, if you want, I can actually meet with you and I can help you through this, because that's not the way we should go about it. We should go about it based on when we recruited them and when we talked to them, what they themselves identified as. That's what I mean. Like if they said, oh, like I've been in the space for 10 years, that is obviously someone that's been in the space for 10 years. Because again, we're reporting based on what the participant perceives themselves as.
Mhm.
And that's the important piece. And so I can help you, Mo, if you want to like kind of figure out how to make sure that we label the data.
Yeah.
I can help you with
Let's
that.
meet
Just
later
to
on
keep-
in the week. I really, yeah. Let's meet later on in the week. I'll send you a message. This is absolutely amazing. Let's do that. All right, guys. So next steps. Joken, for you, I share everything in the research channel, so you can start to piece together things. I meet with Val, and Christoph and Elena have given themselves homework. Sounds good?
Yeah.
I'd really like to thank everyone who's been on this call. I'm so sorry that it ran 8 minutes over, but it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mo, and
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you, team.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye bye.